sucks the happiness right out of you. Raise your hand if you could hear Adrian's piano. Yay! Okay, great. Awesome. Yay for Miss Adrian. Thank you. Yay!
Just Adrian.
So, can you hear me out there? Hold on a second. I've got all this AV equipment. I need like somebody to help me out with this. Okay. Now you can hear me?
No. There you are.
There I am. Okay, cool. So, let's talk about your story. That was my story. So the cool thing about that song, when I wrote that song, and the first line, which I didn't type up for you, but the first line says, "You don't even know me until you know yourself." Right? I mean, like, it's so simple, but it's really so important. So one of the themes we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to keep talking about, is the awareness piece, right? Because when we become aware of our stories, we can't become unaware of them, right? Like, once you become aware of something, you don't normally give that back, like a return that you might have at TJ Maxx. You might change your mind on it, but once you become aware, you definitely have that awareness that's yours to keep. So that's a really important point. We're going to talk about that the whole time, because when you have awareness of what your stories are, then you have choices, right? When we have awareness, now we can make choices. Does this story support me? Is this a loving story that I keep telling myself, or that I tell others? So once you have that awareness, you have that freedom, and you heard the song kind of rise in the middle, right? Right in the middle of what we call the bridge of the song. And I talked about having freedom, because when you have awareness and then you have the choices, that gives you freedom in life. We all want choices and we all want freedom, right? And why do we tell stories anyways? We tell stories because we want to connect with each other, right? Like, if you want to get to know me, then I might tell you one of my stories, good, bad, or ugly. And if I want to get to know you, you tell me your story. So we share stories. And it's an ancient thing in this civilization that we've shared stories for centuries. We share stories about ourselves, but sometimes we just don't realize that we get stuck, right? We're like a broken record. I mean, I grew up with like records with the needle down. My kids think like, okay, that's the olden days big time. But it's like a broken record, gets stuck in the groove, gets stuck. Like, oh my God, I'm stuck. Oh my God, I'm stuck. So today we hope to lift that needle up a little bit and help you get unstuck. Right? Get a new groove, so to speak. Get a new song for yourself. Because songs are really just little tiny 3-minute encapsulated stories, right? Songs are a way that I tell stories, and you may tell your stories in a different medium. You may be a very verbal person, or you may be an artist, and you may tell your stories in beautiful pictures. Or you may wish that you could tell stories in a different way, but you just never have. You just never stepped out to tell your story in a new way. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and I've made it super easy. So I know I've gone to so many seminars, and sometimes I walk out that door and I'm so excited, but then as soon as I walk out, I forgot everything, or I didn't implement it in my life, right? Has anybody ever done that? For me, only about 1 million times. So today I'm going to make it really easy. I'm going to give you the 5 foundations, and I wrote them on your handout. The 5 foundations of the story, okay? And you can count them on your hands. This is what we do in preschool music class. We make up little things on our hands, and that's how they remember. So STORY, I made up an acronym, and the first one is state, right? So what's your state? And I'm not talking Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont. So we could do a little survey, and I'm sure we'd have a lot of them here. But I mean your state of mind. What is your state? You wake up one day, and I'm in a grouchy state, right? So sometimes we just perpetuate that. I'm going to pick up the phone, and I'm going to call that friend, the one that's going to go, oh my God, I can't believe that happened, really? And she's going to agree with me on everything I say that's bad and terrible and wrong with the world in my life that minute. Versus, waking up and telling an empowering story. And again, it's those little tiny choices that we make. It's catching ourselves when we start to go back into that little groove. And one of the things that I really love, I did strategic intervention coaching with Tony Robbins. Any Tony Robbins fans? Oh. Love Tony Robbins. I never got to meet him, but I would like to meet him someday. And I've been following him for a really long time, like way back in my corporate days, back in the 90s. And he says there's 3 things that affect your state. Your physiology, right? How we use our bodies, how we move our bodies. You could tell what state I'm in if I walked in the room and I held my body in a different way, right? Like we all, you could, that's very different than, So our physiology, I love that one only because it's so easy to change, right? We can change our physiology easier So he says physiology, focus, and language. And I'm going to tell you right now, and I know it's not very objective with me, that music is one of the things that can change your state the fastest. Why? We all know why. We can jump in our car, be in the worst mood, put in our best song, open the windows, start driving and singing along, and all of a sudden, I forgot what I was really upset about. Right? Have you ever had that experience? And I mean, playing music is like it's a whole different world as well, because I could be in a grouchy music mood and go have a music practice with Adrian. Just Adrian. And I can just Adrian. Put the guitar on. She can get over here on her keyboard, and we can leave and go, oh my God, that was so lifting. Why is that so lifting? Well, because I picked that guitar up and I put it right here, right on my tantien, right on the energy and the vibration of that instrument is like running through my body. I just changed my physiology. And you do the same thing when you put your favorite song on the radio and you start thumping on the steering wheel, and you know, people next to you think you're crazy, you're like pretending you're a rock star. And it's way better than being on your phone when you're driving, so I'll take that. So, I mean, think about that. So physiology to me is huge because it's the quickest way. And when we change our body, it's a little secret that I learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza. The mind follows, right? We always think the mind's in control, and it is a lot, but the body is way more powerful than we give it credit for. So you can kind of trick yourself into feeling better, if you will. So that's why music is so powerful. And the other thing I wanted to mention about that is there's other ways to change your state with your physiology. Go for a walk. Walk outside in nature. You know, this whole green thing that everybody talks about now. Earthing, greening, put your feet in the dirt. We've been doing that, since we were kids. My generation, anyways, we spent our whole days outside. So we were green. We were feeling the earth and having it run through us. So changing your physiology, I think, is one of the coolest, fastest ways to change your state. But have you ever noticed you can be in the bad state and you notice you're telling more negative stories, right? Like we talked about, Call a Friend. Here's the interesting thing. It works the other way too. Have you noticed that? You ever find yourself telling a story? You were in a good mood 5 minutes ago, and now my friend wanted to know really what happened the other day, and so I started telling her, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I'm getting so mad just telling the story again. Have you ever felt that emotion? And I'm like, okay, so why do I keep telling the story? I don't know, she wanted to know, so I'm going to tell her. And now I'm all riled up again for no reason, right? So it's so interesting the way that state is affected by the stories that we tell, right? And also we also affect state by choosing which stories that we tell. So it goes both ways. And I don't know about you, but I like to be in the driver's seat. I like to decide how I want to feel. And, you know, geez, I really just noticed telling that story made me upset and angry again. Am I going to keep telling that story? Like, that is not very loving to me. So we're going to try to find out and uncover what is a loving story to you. And just asking yourself that question, is that a really loving story to me? It's going to give you so much insight. And like I said, the awareness is going to give you the choice, which is going to give you the freedom to change. Because if you don't like the way it's going, or you don't like the way your story makes you feel or other people feel, well, here's a chance to change it. So that's S for state. The next thing I wanted to talk about is T, which is true intention. I have a little exercise for you guys on this one. So true intention, what did I mean by true intention? It reminds me of the late, great Debbie Ford. You know Debbie Ford? Man, I love her work. The light, the dark side, thank you. Dark side of the light. I did read it. So if you didn't read it, it's shadow work, right? It's looking at the parts of ourselves that we really don't want to look at, or we want to just pretend they don't exist. And it's kind of like the intention of your story, right? And it took me a little bit to figure this one out. But I say true intention because I needed a T, but more so because intention of your story is so cool and so interesting and so important, because a lot of times we don't even know what our intention is, right? Like it's one of those little sneaky hidden things, like back in one of those back rooms in our mind. For example, you know, you might tell a story because you really are telling the story because you want that person to volunteer to help you or something, right? Like I'm just picking kind of an obscure example. But intention also reminds me of like alignment, right? Like you know when your car is out of alignment and like you could be in for a bumpy ride or it's going to pull you to the left or it's going to pull you to the right. When you're out of, you know when you're out of alignment, right? And it's the same thing with your intention. When your intention is out of alignment with who you really want to be, because we all have good intentions, right? And, you know, our moms all told us what's paved with good intentions. So, when we're out of alignment with our intentions, when our intentions don't match our actions, we feel incongruent, right? We feel off. We're not living the life that we just know that we want to live. Because we know what our intentions are, and sometimes it's just really hard, and life happens to us, right? And so your intentions are really, really going to help you unearth these stories that you're stuck in, right? So we're going to do a quick little exercise, and I'm going to ask you to turn to the person next to you. And I want you to tell them a little snippet. It's a 30-second snippet. Tell them a little snippet story about some obstacle. It can be as small as I stubbed my toe on the way to the shower, okay? Or it can be as big as, like, you know, my whole house flooded this morning and my basement was flooded, which was a true story, but one of my friends texted me. So just tell them a story. It's a little story. It's 30 seconds or less, okay? And I'll watch the time. But here's your intention. Tell them a story, something that happened that impeded you getting here, right? No, I didn't have the money for the ticket, my babysitter didn't show up, my car broke down. And what you did to overcome it. But your intention is to get just a little bit of sympathy, okay? You want a little bit of sympathy, because it was really hard, damn it. So you want sympathy, just a little pity, so we just want to live, okay? Go ahead. You got 30 seconds. Turn to your neighbor, and then we'll switch with
said that about the water. My wife went yesterday, and I went down to my basement. I got so last night I was at Home Depot buying a water heater, and my boyfriend put it in now. I escaped.
Okay, wrap it up with stories. Okay, let's talk now so the other person gets a chance for a little sympathy.
Yeah, did you come yesterday? How was it? Yeah. Stay later for the music. I did, yeah. Is there a drugstore?
Did you get some? No. Raise your hand for a little sympathy. Yeah, not enough sympathy. Okay, so now, really, I want to make sure you get your sympathy. I didn't get any this morning.
I gave you sympathy.
You get, oh, Adrian, I'm sorry, Adrian did give me sympathy. It's like, and I burned my hand, and then there was nobody to work my tables. Thank you, Adrian. I need a little bit. Now, I want you to turn to the same person, tell the same story. The same one. But this time, I want you to empower them. You overcame that obstacle because you're here, I can see you. So I want you to tell them the same story and empower them and inspire with your story. Go ahead.
Really?
Okay, just give the other person a chance to inspire you.
I know, because I didn't even, they don't even know I didn't even know. It was like just a Debbie
Okay, is everybody inspired? Yay! Do you see? I mean, I know it's a silly little exercise, but you can see how just changing your intention changes your whole story, right? Like we've had songs before that we read through. We don't like, victim songs or, I mean, sometimes you gotta get that stuff out, but we always look at it. Hey, is this empowering? Because you want to get clear on what your message is. We want to get clear on that intention because it is a sneaky one. So again, back to the self-awareness, right? When you get clear on what you want your intention to be and what your actions really are, and you close that gap between the intentions and your actions, I promise your life is going to change in really, really incredible ways. Really incredible ways. So that gives you a really good feel for intention. And then the next one is O. So we had S-T-O. And O is for outcome, right? The outcome. So, oh, there I am. Can you guys hear me back there? What is the outcome of my story? Do I like the outcome of the story? How does it make me feel when I tell you my story? And how does it make my listener feel? Like outcome reminds me of, I don't know if anybody read the Stephen Covey book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? I swear to God, it is still a bestseller on Amazon. I looked it up the other day. And that was back in the 90s. When I mentioned the 90s to my 2 teenage children, they go, was that the olden days? Oh yeah, we had horses and buggies. No electricity, outhouses. Churned our own butter. No, that's not the olden days. I think they think it's the olden days because we didn't have these little electronic devices attached to our bodies, right? So that's not the olden days, let's just get that straight. Back in the 90s, I had this boss, it was my boss's boss, and he would come into town and assign each one of us a chapter in Stephen Covey's book. So I got Begin with the End in Mind. I love that one. That's outcome, right? Begin with the end in mind. All right, so why am I telling this story? Do I like the way I feel about myself when I tell the story? Maybe I'm in a social situation because sometimes we tell different stories there. And maybe it's a funny story, but maybe it's not loving to myself. So when we start to take a look at the outcome of the story, and have you ever told a story and everybody's it's celebratory, it's a great mood, and you tell the story and all of a sudden, goes the energy, right? Like you brought the whole room down? That's not a story I want to tell. So do I like the outcome? Do I even like this story? Do I like the story? Like I know it happened to me, and I am not saying that I can take away anything bad that happened, because bad stuff happens. Right? So I'm not saying that would be a whole different talk. So what I am saying though is we have the choice to take a look at it. Do we want to keep telling that story? Because I had this story. I had a story and it was surrounded around the birth of my firstborn. And I belonged to a bunch of play groups with young moms, and everybody always wanted to talk about their story, right? Their experience with the birth, and oh my God, I can't believe this happened, oh my God. It's more like a horror story set. So I decided that I realized I couldn't tell my story because it was really sad and it was scary. And so I would never join in on the conversation. I just talk about or get involved in their story because I just couldn't, because I realized that it just brought me so back there so quickly, so fast. And it was a devastating, because childbirth, as some of us know, it doesn't usually go as planned, so it was just one of those stories I couldn't tell. And that's okay. You might have a story that you don't want to tell because you've looked at it, you picked it up, you examined it. So you know what I did? I decided I don't have to tell that story. Because look over here. Look at this beautiful little shiny baby that I have. Does it really matter how she got here? She's 16 now, mortified that I'm telling the story. It doesn't matter how she got here, right? She's here. And I'm looking at this, if you want to call it a beautiful outcome, was this baby. And she was beautiful and healthy, and I was just going to find a way to let that story go. Because it didn't serve me. And it really wasn't loving to me to keep telling that story. Nor was it loving to any other pregnant woman that might have heard my story, right? I don't like to spread those kind of stories. So I decided that was one of those, and you might have one of those stories. And it's okay to not tell that story. If you make that decision, that's your choice. And that's, again, what we get from awareness. So I decided, actually, and this was the weirdest thing I didn't even expect. I ended up telling the story, and we're going to sing this song for you now. And it was by sheer coincidence, but we know there's no such thing. So Adrian and I fell in love with this charity called Healing Little Hearts, right? And there were so many weird coincidences with this charity. And they were a grassroots foundation. This mom started it to raise money for Children's Hospital for pediatric cardiac research. And it was amazing. I love everything she did. And so we're like, hey, let's give back to this. And oh, wouldn't it be so cool if we had a song that like represented this charity, right? Is that my phone?
That's my phone.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'm like, I am not moving that slow.
I'm sorry.
So anyways, the story was that it came out of me in a song, but I didn't even realize it. So I write the song story. And, you know, as for these people with these children, they didn't expect to be told that their babies had this cardiac problem and, oh my God, a devastation and sadness and craziness. So I could get that. And we would have a stay at Children's too, so it just all resonated with me. So out came this story, and I read the words, and I went, oh my God, that's my story. Wait a second, that's my story. And then I realized, but it's everybody's story, isn't it? Everybody has a story like that. And when you hear the words to the song, and you sing the chorus with us, you're really going to get to know it. And you realize it's everybody's story. And we're all just a little bit, so please do sing with us.